Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Are we frantically skidding through the final weeks? Okay, so real talk, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to maybe make one brief or two really brief videos to get us more comfortable with the idea of a theory map because I have received different kinds of questions about the final graded activity for Social Work 865. I have to start this out by saying thank you to those of you who have made appointments, who have shown up to office hours to gain clarity about the theory map activity. I have offered office hours both in the morning and the evening time, and I've made myself available so that no one should feel the crunch around this time. I will now take what I have collected from emails and inboxes and the conversations from office hours to talk you through the theory map activity. This is in no way to be interpreted as condescending to anyone's question about how to do this. This is so that I can hear myself explaining to see if there are any gaps in what I have written for the description of the assignment and to fill in those gaps, because if it's already written, I can't change what is written, but I can fill in the gaps by going through it out loud, by considering the conversations that I've had with your peers, and giving you some tips so that we can get this done. And I will offer some disclaimers. I will preface things that I will say because you might take my directness in a couple of ways, which is why I chose to keep my video on so you can always see my face and my two French braids and know that I'm a real person as always, and I'm just going to be 100 with you. I developed this course at a level so that when you leave this course, I wanted you to have more questions about who you are as a practitioner and how you will use theory in your practice. Everything I have done was done intentionally. Many of you have requested a template or a model. I've even alluded within this course, there are samples or examples, and there are samples and examples of the theory map. Those samples and examples can be found in the work that you've submitted. You have been working on this theory map the entire course. Anytime you've been asked to identify theory, to deconstruct it, to summarize it, to synthesize it, to make it fit into your practice, to make your practice fit into it, to look at some of the limitations of it fitting into practice, that is what theory mapping is. This activity was developed with this course in mind. It was uniquely made. You will not find an example in Google. If you do, share it with me because I created this assignment for this class. I designed this. So don't spend time trying to find what does not exist unless you go back through your materials and you review your activities. That is where the learning takes place. You have everything you need to complete this activity. So now I'm going to go through the description, and I think I remember an example from last week's office hours that I shared with your peers on how to think about this based on a practice example, and then we'll take it from there. I appreciate you all. And I'm going to go to assignments. Alrighty. Cannot believe it's already almost May. All right. So what we're going to do is you're going to submit this activity, and Canvas is going to randomly assign your submission to a peer for peer review. And I will actually do a separate, very brief video on how to complete the peer review form, and then I'll post that where you submit it. But your peer is going to give you feedback. And why would your peer give you feedback? Because you care more about what your peer thinks than what I think, right? And it also will provide you feedback on how the information transfers from your mind to text, whether it be in written form or in presentation form. That is what is important, because in your mind it can be very clear, but then how does it transfer from here to text? You are going to develop a theory map. So what is a map? A map is a guide, okay? Some people like to use MapQuest, which is kind of maybe dated, or Yahoo Maps or Google Maps, right? If you need to find directions, you plug in the address, your destination, you plug in where you start, and it gives you a route. It gives you different ways to look at that route. You can preview, it gives you step by step, or it give you the map and you see the line connecting. A map is a guide. This is your theory guide. However you need to think about this to get this done, do so. You're going to create a guide or a map of theories. You're going to have a summary of them that helps you address a practice issue. Okay? So listen to me. Come into my land, my story. This is based on very, very true events. I have a student that recently came to me, and the student was doing a practicum, which the student has finished now. And the student identifies as female, as African American. And the student was at a facility on UK's campus. And at that facility, among her were two employees, two UK employees. And the conversation began that one of them said, is Juneteenth a real holiday? Now, if you don't know or are not familiar with the Juneteenth, I would encourage you to look that up. It has very heavy significance around the Emancipation Proclamation, Abraham Lincoln, slavery. It's a heavy component. But it's a day, it's a series of days set aside. But I'm going to let you do that research if you're not familiar with it. So this UK employee asked, is this a real thing? And mind you, my student is in the presence. And the other UK employee says, I don't give a SH bloop bloop if it is. Again, my student is African American and my student is female. My student believes in Juneteenth, understands the history of enslaved Africans in this country, and is highly, highly disturbed and upset by what they have just experienced. My student comes back to me and shares this with me, among other things. So, being who I am, I have to listen, and then I have to figure out what's the next step. How do I support this student? How do I begin to think about other students who will occupy the space this student is now leaving? Focus on the issue at hand. This is a practice issue. This is the issue in terms of humility or lack thereof, of awareness, of respect, of discrimination. I could go ahead and talk about racism, but there's so many layers to this, because then there's the issue at hand of what was said, but then there's also the issue of my student. How do I take care of my students and the students that will follow behind that student? As a supervisor, as an advisor, what do I need to understand to work with this student that has come to me? What frameworks, what perspectives would support the work that needs to be done for this student? I could go critical theory. I could go feminist theory. I could go ecological theory. I could go identity theory. I could look at different models of identity. I could look at organizational theory. I mean, there's just so many things that I could begin to look at if I'm working with the student directly. And this is a big problem, still is a big problem. But I have to decide, how do I work with this student? How do I honor this student and where they are if they wanted to return? If they did not want to return, what helps me understand that? What if my student said, I don't want to go back? What does empowerment theory say about that? What did Bandura say about self-efficacy, one's belief? You know, what happens when the student has to go into the workplace and someone dismisses who they are and their value? Because it will happen. How does that become a teachable moment? What is resiliency theory? So see, I'm pulling from here and from there, and I'm not even scratching the surface because I'm still a little bit micro focused. I hinted at some macro, but I really have not gone there. So as you can see, I'm taking a practice-based issue and I'm looking at perspectives that will help me figure out how will I best work and serve my client system, which is my student. If I'm focused more on the bigger picture, how will I best serve my organization? If that were to be my college, okay, more macro organizational. So supervision theory, supervisory theories. What do I need to know about organizational climate, you know, and political theory? You know, how do you navigate these bureaucracies within these organizations and what people say, you know, how do we do all of this? So again, you have everything you need to look at any issue that is of utmost importance to you and present that. All right, so now that I have shared that example and this video is getting a little bit long, I'm actually going to, well, I'll go ahead and go forward and review how we would do this. So now you have the example of my student and the issue at hand. And here we go. And you can do this either way. So as I mentioned, it can be client, it can be context, or organization specific. So I've given you an example that is rich across all three of those areas. And I could choose, and I'm just limiting it to two theories. So to take a broad view, okay, this is how you're going to do it. It is two parts. You're going to, in a Word document, identify the theories that you're going to focus on, okay? Reference theories are things such as social learning theory, psychodynamic theory, those root theories, if that's where you're going. And there are many, many others. Any perspectives or models, if you're following those, you want to talk about those. You want to talk about who they are, what they are, who created them, in what context, time frame, why, what did they stem from? We need to know about this. I'm saying use your words and shapes to illustrate the map. Get creative. It is a working document because you want to be able to, you have to be able to write and communicate those things. But if you need to draw out, you know, if this is your theory, but it came from here, it grew from that, I could have a little circle where it grew from, arrow, big circle. It could be that simple. Or if it spawned from something else. This is yours. This is for you to illustrate. What if you have two theories that are kind of cousins? They spawned from one reference theory, or you have a model I've shared with you all that I'm a behaviorist. And so doing my HIV research, a lot of my work is deeply rooted in, I've talked about Bandura a whole lot. So if I look at the AIDS risk reduction model or the health belief model or the theory of changed behavior, all those stem from something. I might have one root model and then those that stem from it. So how does that look? That is what the map in and of itself looks like, right? That's what your written document will do. The presentation of this is what you are going to record, okay? These prompts here are what you will review in your presentation. I think that these prompts here would also be excellent to review in the written part as well. When you leave this program, the difference between you then and before you started the program should be your ability and capacity to articulate how you think and why you think. You have no more brain power than you had when you began the program, but you should have increased your capacity to critically question, critique, and think so that you can take bullet points like these and flesh them out. And that is the difference of a higher level of thinking, which I personally and professionally see as an indicator of advanced learning and a higher credential that is indicative of a doctorate level of training, that you can do all of this. If I can tell a master's level student to give me a summary, what would I ask a doctorate level student to do? And so as I have reviewed work that you all have turned in over the last couple of weeks, you've done everything that you need to do to handle this assignment. This should be fun. This should be unique. This should be challenging. If you have any reservations about the technology part of it, feel free to email me. I've had office hours. I will continue to have office hours. I will help you. I will give you some pointers the best that I can. It's not about what Dr. Connor wants. It's about the product that you will have so that as you move forward, you have a reference for yourself because this should continue to grow. I hope that this will continue to grow for you, that you can add additional theories, that your map will bloom. I don't want there to be more social issues and problems, but there will. Your clients will become more complex. Social issues will become more complex. Trauma will become more compound. What are we going to do about it? When will we stop using some of these basic level theories and really start integrating these other perspectives and ways of knowing that help us answer, explain, understand, describe, predict all the things that theories yearn to do? That's the whole reason for the course, is for us to understand that broad view, that meta theorizing, all those components, all those, a person is multidimensional. Bring that into it. I mean, how deep are you willing to go so that when your peer is reviewing the work, they can see that you have integrated the text, that you've integrated previous work, you've presented your social issue or the thing that has become an issue for you, your stump where you want to grow in your learning, and you've identified perspectives and you've talked about them and described them in a way so that moving forward, they can say, I won't forget that. I get that. So I hope this has been helpful. And if you have questions, feel free to send me an email, not a panic email. There is no model for this. There is no template for this. If you're looking for that, go back and look at your assignments that you've turned in because you've done this in several of the assignments. You've started this. Some things where I've asked you to identify one theory, that's a clue. You started it there. Now you're fleshing it out. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.